What if I told you that in the middle of February 2026, the most powerful political movement in modern American history just hit an invisible wall inside its own house? We are standing in the high-tension atmosphere of the 11th of February 2026, and the unthinkable has happened. The Republican-controlled House of Representatives has just staged a full-scale, open-floor rebellion against President Donald Trump. While the headlines were focused on the escalating border disputes, a secret coalition of 6 brave Republicans, men like Don Bacon, Thomas Massie, and Brian Fitzpatrick, joined forces with the Democrats in a high-stakes session to block the president's national emergency declaration. This isn't just a legislative delay, it is the Great Betrayal. For the first time in 2026, Trump's own party has signaled that the price of his trade wars is officially too high, and the echoes of this mutiny are shaking the very foundations of the White House as we speak. Hello friends, welcome to Geo Unseen YouTube channel. Today we break down the Great Betrayal and why US lawmakers just rebelled against Trump. As of the 11th of February 2026, the halls of Congress are in absolute chaos. The House vote, which was expected to be a simple rubber stamp victory for the administration's tariff policy, turned into a stunning defeat by a margin of 219 to 211. This was a direct rebuke of the fentanyl emergency that Trump invoked exactly 1 year ago to justify a massive 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. But why now? Why did these 6 Republicans, Don Bacon of Nebraska, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, Kevin Kiley of California, Dan Newhouse of Washington, and Jeff Hurd of Colorado decide to cross the aisle and defy their leader? The answer lies in the devastating economic data hitting their desks. Internal reports from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, led by Democrat Gregory Meeks, revealed a terrifying reality. Trump's tariffs have already caused the cost of living for the average American family to skyrocket by nearly $2,400 annually since early 2025. In states like Washington, where Representative Dan Newhouse's constituents rely heavily on cross-border trade, the 25% tariff has been described as an economic suicide pact. Small businesses are collapsing, and farmers are watching their equipment costs rise by 15 to 20% overnight. These 6 lawmakers realize that if they didn't act, they would be held responsible for an impending economic depression in the 2026 midterm elections. The drama leading up to the vote was like a scene from a political thriller. Just minutes before the final tally, President Trump took to Truth Social, issuing a direct and terrifying warning: any Republican in the House or the Senate that votes against tariffs will seriously suffer the consequences come election time. And that includes primaries. He was literally threatening to end the careers of his own party members on the House floor. Yet, the Rebel Six didn't blink. They stood their ground as Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, proclaimed that House Democrats had successfully forced a vote to detonate the Trump tariffs. But this rebellion goes deeper than just trade numbers. It's about the very definition of presidential power in 2026. Lawmakers are starting to fear that the use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, PSA, is being weaponized against America's closest allies, creating a global instability that the US military isn't prepared to handle. As the gavel hit the desk and the result was announced, the message was clear. The iron grip of the MAGA movement on Congress has finally found its breaking point. For the first time in his second term, Donald Trump is standing alone against a bipartisan coalition that is finally terrified of the economic fallout. The 2026 political landscape has just shifted, and the war for the future of the GOP has officially begun. The moment the gavel hit the desk on the 11th of February 2026, signaling the president's defeat, the atmosphere in Washington shifted from political debate to an all-out civil war within the Republican Party. Within 30 minutes of the vote, the White House was reportedly in a state of maximum lockdown. Sources inside the West Wing describe a scene of absolute fury, with President Trump reportedly ordering his staff to compile a formal retribution list before the ink on the House vote was even dry. This is the part of the 2026 story that the mainstream media is too afraid to fully explore. The birth of the political execution list. Trump didn't just stop at a Truth Social post. He reportedly ordered the RNC to immediately cut off all data access, campaign funding, and logistical support for the Rebel 6 lawmakers, effectively leaving them stranded in the middle of a brutal election year. But let's look at the data that triggered this explosion. The rebellion led by lawmakers like Thomas Massie and Don Bacon wasn't just a random act of defiance. It was based on a classified briefing from the US Chamber of Commerce that predicted a total collapse of the Midwest supply chain by the third quarter of 2026 if the Canadian tariffs remained at 25%. We are talking about a projected loss of 450,000 high-paying jobs across Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. The rebels realized that if they stayed loyal to Trump's tariff policy, they would be walking into a political slaughterhouse in the November 2026 midterms. The Great Betrayal was actually a desperate attempt to save the Republican majority in the House from a president who, in their view, has become economically blinded by his own fentanyl emergency narrative. The 2026 landscape is now a battlefield of intelligence and intimidation. Following the vote, the Trump administration reportedly activated a loyalty audit within the Department of Justice. This isn't just a standard review. It's a move to investigate the donors and business connections of the rebel lawmakers to see if foreign interests played a role in their decision. This is how the 2026 administration operates. If you vote against the policy, you are labeled a threat to national security. The pressure is so intense that several of the rebels have reportedly requested increased security after receiving a flood of threats from extremist factions who view their vote as high treason. But here is the real secret behind the rebellion. It's the $3.1 trillion Treasury bond crisis. While the president was focusing on trade leverage, the US Treasury was struggling to sell government bonds to international buyers. Why? Because the trade war with Canada and the potential for a 100% tariff on other allies has made the US dollar look increasingly volatile. The lawmakers who rebelled were privately warned by Wall Street titans that the US was headed for a massive credit rating downgrade. They were told that the Trump economy was building a house of cards on a foundation of debt and isolation. By blocking the national emergency, these 6 Republicans were trying to send a signal to the world markets that there is still a check on the president's power. As we speak, the White House is preparing a series of retribution rallies in the home districts of the rebel lawmakers. Trump is planning to fly into their territories and personally endorse primary challengers, essentially telling his base to clean house. This is a gamble of epic proportions. If Trump successfully ousts these rebels, he solidifies absolute control over the GOP. But if the rebels survive their primaries, it will be the first sign that the MAGA movement is losing its grip on the American heartland. The 2026 political war has moved from the House floor to the streets of Middle America, and the world is watching to see if the US government can survive its own internal fire. As the sun rises over the Potomac on the 20th of February 2026, the Great Betrayal has officially triggered a constitutional showdown that could end the Trump presidency as we know it. The House rebellion wasn't just a political symbolic act, it was a legal fuse that led directly to the front steps of the Supreme Court. While the Rebel 6 were being hunted by White House retribution teams, a group of massive manufacturing corporations led by Learning Resources, Incorporated successfully pushed a case titled Learning Resources, Incorporated versus Trump, to the highest court in the land. Today, February 20, is the day the world has been waiting for. The day the Supreme Court decides if the President of the United States can unilaterally tax the entire world, or if he has just committed the ultimate high crime of overstepping his constitutional bounds. The tension inside the courtroom is at a level not seen since Bush v. Gore. The stakes? A staggering $200 billion in annual tariff costs and the potential for a $140 billion refund that the US Treasury simply does not have. The data being presented to the justices is devastating. In the last year alone, Trump's use of the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, PAP, has bypassed the traditional 270-day investigation periods required by other trade laws. The rebel lawmakers in the House have filed an amicus brief supporting the corporations, arguing that the fentanyl emergency was a hollow pretext to seize the power of the purse, a power that the Constitution explicitly gives to Congress under Article 1. If you want to be the first to know the Supreme Court's final verdict and see the secret Section 122 plan in action, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe Geo Unseen YouTube channel. We are documenting the fall of the old order and the rise of the 2026 chaos. The decision is coming down any second. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace from Geo Unseen.